Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're going to be talking about acrylic color mixing and value. Just like the color wheel video, this exercise is really good for beginning painters, but every painter should do it at least once so you can understand how all of your paints mix together. And also, like the last video, this is a really good exercise to put in your sketchbook or any surface you would normally paint on. Your main paints today are going to be white and black. You want these to be very opaque, so I have a titanium white and a Mars black because these are very solid pigments. But in addition to this, you're going to want one other color. I'm going to be using primary red, but anything on the color wheel should work great. To make this easier on yourself, I do suggest picking up some painter's tape, but if you're doing this on paper, you want to give it a test first to make sure it won't rip your paper when you take it off. When you have a color that's as bright as it can be, it's fully saturated, there's no neutrals mixed in, that's called a hue. It's basically everything on our color wheel. So when we have red here, it's the brightest red we can have. It's not lighter or darker or grayer or brown. It's just plain red, super bright here on my board. Now I'm taking that hue and I'm changing the value. I'm changing the lightness or darkness of it. I can do that really easily with white and black, and that's how we're going to be doing that today. On my board, I'm going to draw out 4 rectangles and then we'll start to fill in different value scales. My tape is functioning as the lines of my rectangles, but if you wanted to put the pencil down first and then tape around the boxes, that's also fine. But now that I have my 4 rectangles, I'm going to take the first one and the third one and divide them up into 9 pieces. My biggest tip for painters is to start with your lightest color and add small amounts of your darker color to it. This works whether you're doing value or you're doing something with yellow and like green. Yellow is your lighter color, so you want to add small amounts of green to it until it's right. It's a lot harder to take a darker color and add a light color to it to get it where you want. That dark color is very overwhelming for the light color. You need a lot of the light color to kind of make it change to where you want it to go. It's a lot easier to go the other way. So make sure you're always starting with your lightest color and adding small amounts of your dark color. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting paint. Now I'm doing 2 of these in black and white and 2 of these with a color. So the top 2 are going to be the black and white ones, and we're going to do those first. The very first one is going to be a stepped value scale. Now this is taking the entire range of gray between white and black and breaking it into 9 pieces. I want to make sure that I have the lightest color, which is going to be titanium white, and it's going to get incrementally darker going down till it's all the way to Mars black on the right. I did the white first, so there wasn't any black on the paintbrush that would make this a gray. But now that that's done, I want to do the Mars black on the opposite side. I need to wash this because it's going to become slightly gray at least with a little bit of titanium white on my brush. The box right in the middle, I've marked it with a star, is 50% gray. And with paint, you can't just take half white and half black and mix them together and assume it's going to be 50% gray, because like I said, the darker color is very overwhelming, and you kind of have to go back and forth until you have something that's correct. But today, to make sure I do have a 50% gray, I have my color checker here. This is something I hold up to the camera before I do a MalMakes video, and then when I edit, I can make it look right, because these are very specific colors in editing to make sure that everything else is going to look the way that you see it in person. So on the color checker, on the top here, I have white, black, and then I have a 50% gray. So I'm going to have this out and I'm going to try and match the gray that I make with the white and black paint to match it pretty close to this gray here. So if I have to, I can add more white paint to lighten it up a little bit or more black paint to darken it until I have a 50% gray to put in this box. So I just have a little bit of black paint compared to how much white paint I have here, and I'm going to mix them together and see how it looks. As I'm working, I'm just going to keep comparing it to 50% gray until I'm happy with it. Not everyone's going to have a color checker or like Pantone cards, but you can use your phone to pull up an example of 50% gray. I like working this way with a stepped value scale because I have a center point. I can kind of know that's center, everything this way is going to be lighter gray, and everything this way is going to be darker gray. I could do it where I start with white and then add a little bit of black paint, and then more black paint, and more black paint, but very quickly I might add too much and then all of these are going to look like black paint. Or I could kind of keep too much white paint and not add enough black paint, and then by the time I get down here, it won't be dark enough to go to a black paint. It'll just still be medium gray. So I really like breaking it up with the center point, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to worry about these 3 light grays. So on my palette, I'm going to take my 50% gray and my white and mix up 3 different puddles of paint, using different amounts of white and gray for all of them so they all look like they're a different shade of light gray. You can see all 3 of my light grays right here. They're very different from each other, and they're very different from the white paint and the 50% gray. Now, I did test the darker one a little bit here on the 50% gray that's on the palette, just to make sure it was light enough, because at first it seemed a little too dark, like I had too much 50% gray. So I just added a little bit more white just to move it a little closer to the lighter gray side. And now I can put the lightest here, the medium one here, and the darkest one here. Just like the light gray side, I'm mixing up 3 very different dark grays. I'm starting with the 50% gray and adding small amounts of black paint to all of them until I'm happy with how different they look from each other. Personally, I find the darker paints are a little harder to mix because they start to look the same. You're like, well, could this one get any darker if I add more black? And then how much is too much? I don't want it to be the same color as the Mars Black. So once I was happy with them, I was testing them against the 50% gray to make sure that it was just dark enough that you could tell a difference. And then I made sure that the medium one was darker than the lighter one. And then I had to make sure that these 2 were definitely different colors. So I'm going to go ahead and fill these in these 3 here with the lightest, the medium, and the dark. Our next value scale is still in black and white, but I want to have a gradient. It's going to be smooth from the titanium white all the way to the Mars Black. It's not going to have the divisions that the value scale above it has. So just like before, I am starting with the white paints, and I'm going to paint it across the top here, well, the left here. And I'm going to paint it maybe to about down here. And I kind of naturally want to run out of paint on the brush, so there's not much paint over here. And I can always add more white paint, making sure I keep the paint heavy on the left and just kind of naturally run out of paint towards the middle. Once I have a good coverage of the white, I'm going to switch over to the black. With the white done, I need to work quickly because it's going to dry and I want to keep it wet. So I'm going to switch brushes and start with black and do the same thing from the right going left. trouble with acrylic is it dries so fast that this is a lot harder to do than this is. So while it does dry fast and it makes this harder, it also means that when it's dry, I can go back over the top and try again. Moving on to our color value scales, I'm doing a stepped color scale for the first one. I'm doing titanium white on the left, Mars black on the right, and a hue in the middle. And a hue is the most saturated color, remember. So I'm going to be using primary red, but anything on the color wheel would work great. When you mix a color plus a hue, you get a tint. So I'm going to be putting 3 tints of my red in these 3 boxes. I want a light red, a lighter red, and a lightest red. And just like I was making these 3 grays up here, I'm going to make 3 different piles with different ratios of the white and the color until I have 3 very different tints of red. Tints of red are actually pink, which is why pink isn't on our color wheel. Pink is just a tint of red. A color plus black is called a shade, so I'm going to have 3 different shades of red. Dark red, darker red, and darkest red. So just like the rest of them, I'm going to mix up different ratios of red and black until I have 3 very different shades. To do the color version of the gradient value scale, it's like doing 2. I'm going to do one with the tints over here, and then after it's dry, I'm going to do one over here with the shades. But I'm going to make sure red goes a bit further so I can make sure that when I do the shades later, I'll be able to blend it and have some room before I start getting into the tints. And now my favorite part is removing all the tape. I find I have less chance of peeling up the paint if I put it like straight back on itself like this and peel down. You can create value scales with any color, and you'll see how you can start to take your base color and start to change it to make it lighter or darker based on the situation you need. You can also start to see how you need to affect the base color to make it what you want. If you want it lighter, you need to start adding some white, so you can start to learn how to mess with your colors to change their value. There's still other ways to change your color, so next time we're going to talk about intensity. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another MalMakes video.